Hi, Jodie. How are you?
Hi, I'm wonderful. How are you?
Wonderful. I'm well, thank you. It's a pleasure to chat with you again. Congrats on your leading role in AMC Plus's Anne Boleyn.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So you're playing such a powerful role, the second wife of the most famous British king to live, King Henry VIII, as well as being the mother of Elizabeth I, which is such a complex story. Can you first tell us how you landed the role of Anne and what the audition process was like for you, if any?
Yeah, well, basically the filmmakers approached me about playing this role. This was shortly after I had just had my baby. So I was really interested in what felt to me like a story about motherhood.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about that raw feeling of after having just given birth where you're just like, everything. You kind of see the parallels everywhere. And this is a woman Anne Boleyn is a woman who was essentially living in a time when women were very much valued by their ability to be able to birth, provide heirs, things that are, when women were really limited in many ways, and women had to figure out how to take power in their own ways. And so the story kind of appealed to me because I saw it as a story of a woman trying to survive in her time. Mm-hmm. And when they told me about it and what they planned to do with it, and I thought it was so interesting that they wanted to go an unconventional route into the storytelling by doing identity-conscious casting, and I decided to come on board.
Nice. And Anne suffers quite a bit, through this with the infidelities of her husband and the miscarriages and just the rumors, the concubines. How does she use that power engulfing all of this pain to fight for her daughter's right to the throne?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, before Henry left the church, and in order to, actually legitimize, first of all, herself and any potential heirs that she would give him, she needed to get that marriage. And I think always it was kind of, we don't have any real records of Anne Boleyn in her own works. We only have what everyone else has written about her, which is what makes her this sort of fascinating and in some ways mysterious character. And so, if you choosing to kind of tell the story in the way that we did, we thought, what about understanding her, trying to understand her as a woman whose ambitions really stemmed from her desire to make sure that her children would be safe. Mm-hmm. And so that was something. And also that, I think what was so groundbreaking about Anne Boleyn is that she wanted to make sure that women had a seat at the table. She was politically involved. She was involved in moving the culture forward. And this was kind of unheard of. Mm-hmm. And so you have to sort of ask yourself whether some of the hate that she gets has more to do with the fact that she was so ambitious in that way, that she wanted not only to legitimize herself, but to legitimize her daughter, who then eventually went on to be one of England's greatest monarchs.
Absolutely. And we see that in some, this real life rival with Thomas Cromwell, who was the advisor to King Henry. Mm-hmm. And, what can you tell us about that, playing, that across, playing that part, that rival with Thomas Cromwell and having to be calculated in dodging, his takedown of her?
Well, I mean, I think in those times, if you weren't calculating, you died.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So it's like, we all sort of look at it as this like negative thing in terms of how calculating she was. But, it was the smartest way to survive, was to think on your feet and to figure out how. And, at a certain point, Cromwell and Anne were not enemies. They weren't always enemies. But I think at the point in which it was more convenient for him to get rid of her, he moved to that side of things. And again, I feel, and at least in the way that we told the story, that it had a lot to do with the fact that, you know, she wanted to be so involved. She wanted womankind to have such a big say. She wanted to make so many changes that people felt like she was stepping outside of her lane and thus needed to be quieted.
Definitely. And, you know, you kind of touched on this, that, you know, record keeping in the 1500s and its interpretation tended to be overwhelmingly male. And women striving for power, usually described as trickery. Why is it important for women's stories like this one to be told and re-examined by women? I know that you had a predominantly female-led team. So what was that like as well, to have quite a few women behind the series?
Yeah, you know, I think there are just certain nuances that are going to come from storytelling when a woman is telling a woman's story. It's very easy for us to believe certain things based on who is the one who left the record, you know, and that's really with all history, right? In a way, what is recorded in the books then becomes the truth, but who was it recorded in the books by? You know what I mean? And what was their agenda in recording it in the way that they did? And so when you have a group of women telling a story, I think they're willing to kind of look beyond just what's on the page and what's said, and look at what some of the facts are, and then take those facts and run them through the lens of the nuances of having a human experience that's female, and say, well, actually, perhaps this was different than what I've always been told to believe it was.
Absolutely. And what were some of the highlights of working opposite Mark Stanley?
Oh, Mark is so lovely. I mean, he's just a really lovely human being. It's always wonderful to play with an actor who's generous and giving and kind, but also to play with an actor who is confident enough to be able to hold space for the female story to be front and center.
Definitely.
So that's what was really wonderful about working with Mark.
And what can we expect next from you?
My film After Yanks is coming out, I think, the soonest, which I did with Colin Farrell, and that we took to Cannes, but we are also, I think, premiering that soon in the new year. Nice. I'm not sure if I can talk about the details of that, and then I am currently here in New York City working on a film called The Independent with Brian Cox, who is absolutely incredible. I've honestly been so lucky with all of the leading men that I have gotten to work with so far. Yes. So yeah, that's what's coming up for me.
Exciting. Well, thank you so much for taking time out for Glitter Magazine, and we wish you nothing but the best, and looking forward to hopefully chatting again soon.
Thank you so much.